Hi, this is Danai, and in today's video I'm going to be answering your questions. In my previous video I asked you to leave any question that you want me to answer in the comments, and I got some really interesting questions, so I'm definitely looking forward to going through them and answering them. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first question was, what do you do on days when you're not motivated to practice? This is a question that I get a lot, also in interviews, and I always say the hardest thing is to begin. So when I'm not motivated, I kind of force myself to just start, to just sit at the piano and play those first few notes. And once you start, everything else kind of falls in place, because when you're not motivated, it's usually not that you don't want to practice in general, it's that for some reason you just don't feel like making that first step. So I just kind of find ways to really force myself to make that first step. For example, I tell myself, okay, before I eat lunch, I want to start practicing the piano, and then I just start, and then usually the motivation is going to come automatically. The next question was, which historical sources I think are a must for pianists concerning style and technique. And I think one of the most important books ever is Leopold Mozart's book on violin playing. It's called something like The Fundamental Principles of Violin Playing. I realize that it's actually not about piano, it's about violin, but I believe that it really is about music making in general. I have taken so many insights from this book, and I would definitely recommend to any pianist to read this book, and I believe that you get so much knowledge about how to play Mozart, how to play composers from the classical period in general, and just a lot of great ideas about music making in general. Another book that I would recommend, it's not 100% a historical source because it's written by Botki. Botki was a musicologist that lived in the 19th century, and he wrote a book about Johann Sebastian Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier. And this is also a book that I have read in detail and that has helped me a lot. It has all kinds of tempi for every prelude, every fugue, a lot of things on ornaments, on how to play a trill, how to play all these little things that Bach uses. And I feel that it is a very good book to use, even if it's not exactly from Bach's time, of course, but this is another book that I would recommend to any pianist if you're studying Bach. Another interesting question was whether I believe that you need to be talented to play the piano or to be a pianist. And this is kind of a tricky question. I do think that there is something like an innate musicality, that some people are just more musical than others, which to me means that they feel music instinctively. They kind of instinctively know where a phrase is going to go. When they're very young, you play a note and they sing the right note. These kind of things to me translate into being musical and maybe what you would call having a talent for music. But I also really believe that the large part of it is the work that you put into it. If you look at any great pianist, I'm sure that they have some talent, but I would say 90% of it, maybe some people are going to disagree with me, but I would say 90% of it is the work. And sometimes it's even the less talented people that make it further in their musical career, because they just put in so much more work that they kind of surpass the more talented people. So of course, having this instinctive approach to the piano or to any musical instrument helps, but I would say the hard work is really the biggest part, and this is what's going to get you far. Being a hard worker with zero talent is going to get you further than being the most talented person on earth but not putting in the work. Why do you never look at the camera? I think that's because I have a screen where I see myself in, and I look at that. So I don't look exactly at the camera, but I look a little bit to the side because I'm checking in the screen how I look. The next question is directed at the music business, I would say, in general. And it is, why do musicians, record labels, concert promoters, everybody kind of program the same pieces over and over again? Because there are so many records of best of Chopin, complete works of Mozart, complete works of Liszt, and all these classics. And why do musicians not gravitate towards the lesser played stuff? This question is not so easy to answer. I believe a big part of it is, of course, what the audience wants, and especially big record labels, of course, are all about the numbers and how many CDs will sell. And the sad truth of the matter is that probably the 100th CD of Chopin waltzes is going to sell better than a CD by a composer that nobody knows. So this is why the biggest names usually play the most played stuff, because that combination is what sells the best. Having said that, I do think that especially in the past 10, 15 years, there has been a little bit of a shift, because more labels, more publishing houses, and especially more concert promoters try to program the lesser played stuff more and more. I personally am a big proponent of bringing music to the stage and recording it on CDs that hasn't been played over and over again. So I totally agree with you that I think that it is important to also play the undiscovered things. And in the end, this is what the big composers did as well. If it wasn't for Mendelssohn rediscovering Bach, we probably wouldn't know him, because in that time everyone had forgotten about Bach. So it really is up to us to kind of discover what are going to be the new classics, I would say, and bring them to the people and to the audience. So I think that there is a shift happening, which is great, but of course I think that it is kind of the responsibility of every single musician to do their part in order to bring also the lesser known gems of music literature to the surface. Would you prefer to teach or to be a concert pianist? As of right now, I would say I mainly am a concert pianist. All my activities revolve around traveling and playing concerts, solo and chamber music, and I absolutely love doing that. But having said that, I have always had a passion for teaching. I've always had a couple of students on the side, and many years ago, when my teacher was still alive, I also assisted him for some time with his younger students. So I've definitely always loved teaching and also gravitated towards it a little bit. So who knows, maybe sometime in the future I might focus on it full time or much more than I do now. I could definitely see myself doing that. I love sharing the knowledge that I have gained with other people and helping other people and seeing the progress. So I could definitely see myself becoming a teacher in the future. Do you give online lessons? As I mentioned before, I do have some students, and I actually love giving online lessons simply because I travel quite a lot when there is no pandemic happening. And teaching online is a great way to do that while traveling, and a great way to kind of see my students regularly, even when I'm not in the same country all the time. When can you expect a book on practice? First of all, thank you. I definitely take that question as a compliment. It's not anything that is planned right now, but I have thought about maybe kind of compiling all the methods that my former teacher, Karl-Heinz Kämmerling, used to have, and maybe putting them in some kind of book. I think this is such valuable knowledge that would be so important for many young beginning piano students to have. It is knowledge that many people actually ask about and look for, and that for some reason doesn't exist yet. So that is a thought that what motivates me to make all these videos for free. When I was a student, I was definitely looking for something like that, kind of honest tips from a pianist who knows what it's like to go on stage, to be nervous, what it's like to prepare for an exam and all of that, and who also is not afraid to talk about that, because I feel like often when you ask musicians, are you nervous, you might hear something like a, no, I never get nervous, which I believe is not really true. I believe everybody gets nervous, and it's more about how you deal with it. So it's just something that I know would have helped me personally when I was starting out with my piano studies, and I actually really like making these videos. It also is something that reminds me of important things while playing the piano. Like when I talk about how important it is to be practicing slowly, it makes me actually consciously practice slowly more on that day. So I just love doing them. I love sharing what I know with other people, and if it helps anybody in any way, then it already was a great reason to make these videos. How important do I think it is to play a duet with another student or teacher? I feel like playing in chamber music of any sort is incredibly helpful, incredibly important, and something that is going to help you immensely with your solo playing as well. So playing duo with your teacher, with your sibling, with your friend, playing a trio with 2 string players, all of that I would recommend very, very much. I have learned so many things by playing with other musicians, by listening to their artistic views and ideas, and I would never want to miss any of those experiences. What brand and model practice instrument do you own? Well, this is my practice instrument, and you probably know it from a couple of videos. It's a Yamaha C3. What is my model pianist and musician? This is a question that I really cannot answer with one name. I honestly don't have one favorite pianist, but I think that an amazing pianist is someone that convinces you with his interpretation, even if maybe you don't completely agree with his interpretation and would personally do it differently. He can convince you with what he is doing. That's what makes an amazing pianist, because he's so in his element and has created such a convincing piece of art that you just believe it. Connected to that question is if I believe that Gould is the best interpreter of Bach. I listened to Gould's Bach CDs when I was young all the time, and I of course loved them. Now, is he the best interpreter? I wouldn't say a clear yes. Let me put it like that. I know that there are people that absolutely love him and people that absolutely dislike him. I definitely think it's very special what he does, and I think that he does convince people, for sure. He has this thing where he does an interpretation that is very unconventional and that, for example, I would not do like that, but he can convince people. So in that way, he is really, truly amazing. However, when you ask me the best Bach interpreter, I would, for example, put another name into the mix, and that's Andras Schiff. I really love his Bach recordings, and in some things I would say I would prefer his to Glenn Gould. Do you find visual MIDIs helpful for learning a piece? I'm not quite sure if I understood this correctly, but I think visual MIDIs are digital visualizations of music. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but this I've actually never used for learning a piece, so I can't really answer that question. What I can say is that for a while I did kind of visualize the score when I was playing it, so I could kind of close my eyes and see the score, but today I don't really do that anymore. The visual aspect to me personally is not that important, but I think that really varies depending on what kind of type you are. There are people that have a photographic memory or that really are visual types, and for them it is essential to visualize things. So that really depends on what kind of a learner you are. What new pieces am I currently working on, and do I play concertos, and which is the next one I would like to learn? First of all, of course, I play a lot of concertos. A big part of my performing is, of course, also performing concertos. Actually, today I would be playing Chopin Etude if it hadn't been cancelled because of the pandemic. So Chopin Etude is the most recent concerto that I learned. The next one that I would like to learn would probably be Shostakovich 2, because I think it's an amazing concerto and I've never played that. And what I'm also really looking into right now is Theodorakis' piano concerto. Theodorakis is probably the most famous Greek composer, and as a half Greek, of course, I like discovering Greek repertoire as well, and he has written an amazing piano concerto, and I think I'm also going to look into that one. Which new pieces am I currently learning? I'm looking into Mussorgsky's Pictures at an exhibition. I'm also looking into Daphnis et Chloé by Ravel, which is of course an orchestral piece, but actually the original version was written by him for solo piano, so I'm looking into that. And also Schumann's Fantasiestücke Opus 12. The next question is, what is the hardest piece I have ever played and how long did it take to learn it? I would say that I find Chopin pretty hard and uncomfortable. I know that some pianists say Chopin is so natural in the fingers, but to me, he actually is not that comfortable. So I would probably say Chopin's first piano concerto is one of the hardest pieces. I find it really more uncomfortable than many other big piano concertos, harder than Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff and stuff like that. So how long did it take me to learn it? I learned it in about two and a half months, something like that. And I would say that was not enough time. The first time that I played it, I was very nervous and I would have loved to have had a little more preparation. The next question is to talk a little bit more about mental practice. I think mental practice is such a huge topic. It kind of is its own video in itself. But what I will say is that I think mental practice is extremely powerful. It certainly can replace physical practice, maybe not completely, but a lot. And it's something that you definitely need to practice. I think very few people can just sit down and successfully mentally practice. There are many things that you have to focus on, and there are many ways of how to practice. For example, if you're thinking about a piece and you're actually practicing in your mind to not move your hand while doing it, but to actually consciously in your mind only playing, this makes you think about it much more consciously than if you're just moving your muscles, things like that. Maybe I should make another video for mental practice. I also think it's very interesting and can be very helpful. So I'll make a note to talk about mental practice in one of my coming videos. Somebody asked if I have suggestions for right hand repertoire. And yes, of course, there are many more pieces for the left hand, but there actually are a couple of interesting things for the right hand as well. There are, for example, Czerny studies if you want to just practice for the right hand, but also pieces. I found a great list on the internet that I can just link in the description box, so just check it out there. And the pieces are divided into advanced repertoire, intermediate, and easier, so maybe you can find something suitable there. So these were your questions answered by me. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you found these answers interesting. I hope this video didn't get too long, but in any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!